My name is Zane. I'm 31 and I work as a financial advisor in Boston helping people avoid costly money mistakes. Ironic, right? Because last spring, I discovered my name on a $470,000 mortgage I never signed while doing a routine credit check. When I realized my parents had used my identity for my sister's dream home, I didn't confront them. I just froze the loan. 2 days later, their realtor called me in a panic. Before I tell you how my entire family imploded, let me know where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had your trust betrayed by someone you love. Growing up in suburban Connecticut, I always knew where I stood in my family's hierarchy. My parents, Robert and Patricia, never tried to hide their preference for my younger sister, Amanda. It wasn't something we discussed openly, but the evidence was everywhere if you paid attention. And I paid attention. When Amanda turned 16, she got a brand new Honda Civic. When I turned 16 2 years earlier, I received a $500 contribution toward whatever car I could afford with my own savings. My summer lifeguard job barely covered a rusted-out Ford that broke down every other week. But I never complained. That was just how things worked in our house. Christmas mornings told the same story. Amanda's pile of gifts always towered over mine. Birthdays. She got parties with dozens of friends at expensive venues. I got pizza and cake at home with my 3 closest buddies. Family vacations, Amanda got to choose the destinations while I was told to be grateful for whatever was decided. Don't get me wrong, we weren't poor. Far from it. My father worked as a hospital administrator, and my mother as a real estate agent in an affluent area. We lived in a 4-bedroom colonial in a neighborhood with good schools and manicured lawns. By most standards, we were solidly upper middle class. But there was a clear message sent through every decision: Amanda was the priority. I learned early on that if I wanted something, I needed to earn it myself. So I did. I worked all through high school, saving every penny I could. When college application time came around, my parents vaguely mentioned they had some money set aside for education, but encouraged me to apply for scholarships and loans. I ended up at the state university with a partial scholarship. I worked 20 hours a week at the campus bookstore and took summer jobs to minimize my debt. Meanwhile, Amanda was promised whatever school she got into, though her grades were mediocre at best. 2 years later, she enrolled at an expensive private college, where she changed majors 3 times before settling on communications. After undergrad, I took a year to work at a bank, saving aggressively before applying to business school. No help from my parents there either. "You're an adult now," my father said. "Time to stand on your own 2 feet." I took out loans, lived in a tiny apartment with 2 roommates, and ate ramen, more often than I care to remember. The hard work paid off. I graduated with my MBA, landed a job at a financial advisory firm in Boston, and slowly built a solid client base. I specialized in helping young professionals set up investment strategies and avoid debt traps. The irony isn't lost on me. By 30, I had paid off my student loans, built an emergency fund, and was contributing the maximum to my retirement accounts. I bought a modest condo in a developing area of the city. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. I was proud of what I'd accomplished on my own. My relationship with my family remained strained but civil. I called on holidays, visited twice a year, and sent appropriate gifts on birthdays. We maintained the appearance of a normal family, even if there was always an undercurrent of tension. Amanda, meanwhile, had followed a very different path. After college, she moved back home temporarily, while figuring out her next steps. Temporary turned into permanent. At 27, she was still living with our parents, working part-time at a boutique owned by my mother's friend and spending most of her earnings on clothes and weekends away with friends. Then Amanda met Bradley. He came from money, family money, and worked at his father's investment firm. He drove a Tesla, wore designer clothes, and took Amanda on lavish dates. My parents were thrilled. Here finally was the successful man who would give Amanda the life they believed she deserved. After a year of dating, Bradley proposed with a diamond ring that cost more than my first car. The wedding was scheduled for the following summer, an extravagant affair that my parents immediately began planning despite their increasingly obvious financial strain. There was just one problem: housing. Bradley, despite his apparent wealth, insisted they find the perfect first home before the wedding. Not a starter home or an apartment, but a showcase property worthy of his status. And Amanda, encouraged by our parents, agreed completely. "We just want her to be happy," my mother told me during one of our phone calls. "She deserves to start her married life in a beautiful home." What she didn't say, but what I suspected, was that my parents' finances weren't as solid as they pretended. My father had taken early retirement after his hospital merged with a larger healthcare system. My mother's real estate business had suffered during the last market downturn. There were hints of trouble: the canceled country club membership, the aging luxury cars they used to replace every 3 years, the renovations that never seemed to happen. Still, I had no idea how desperate things had become. I was focused on my own life, proud of my financial independence, and especially proud of my credit score, 820, built carefully over years of strategic financial management. That perfect credit score that I worked so hard to achieve would soon become the target of a betrayal I never saw coming. It was a Tuesday morning in March when my world turned upside down. I always blocked the first Tuesday of each month for administrative work, reviewing my own finances, catching up on industry news, and planning client strategies. Part of my personal financial review includes checking my credit report, not because I was applying for anything, but because, as a financial advisor, I practice what I preach: regular monitoring is the best defense against identity theft. Or so I thought. I logged into my credit monitoring service, expecting to see the same pristine report I always did. At first glance, everything looked normal. Then I noticed it. A new account opened 3 weeks earlier. A mortgage for $470,000 with a lender I didn't recognize. My first thought was identity theft. Some criminal had somehow obtained my information and used it to secure a mortgage. I felt a surge of panic, followed by a strange calm that comes from professional knowledge. I dealt with this kind of situation for clients occasionally. I knew exactly what to do. I called the lender, explained that I believed I was a victim of identity theft, and asked for details about the application. The customer service representative was helpful but cautious. "I can verify some information with you, Mr. Carter, but I'll need you to confirm your identity first." I provided my date of birth and the last 4 digits of my social security number. "Thank you. Yes. I can see the application here." It was submitted online on February 12th and approved on February 28th. "What address is listed on the application?" I asked, reaching for a pen. When she told me, I froze. It wasn't some random property across the country. It was an address in my hometown, just 3 streets over from where my parents lived. And what contact information was provided? My voice was steady, but my hand was shaking as I wrote. "We have a phone number and email address. Would you like me to share those?" When she read them aloud, my suspicion turned to certainty. The phone number belonged to my father. The email address was one my mother used for her real estate business. I thanked the representative, saying I needed to check some records before proceeding further. After hanging up, I sat motionless, trying to process what this meant. My own parents had used my identity to secure a mortgage. They had stolen from me in one of the most personal ways possible. I needed to see the property. I typed the address into Google Maps and switched to Street View. The image showed a large construction site with a partially built house, clearly new construction, in an upscale development. I remembered my mother mentioning something about a new luxury community being built near them home, starting in the high 4s. With growing dread, I called the lender back, this time posing as someone reviewing my own application. "I'm just calling to verify some details on my recent mortgage application," I said. "My wife and I have been looking at so many properties. I want to make sure everything is correct." This time I learned more. The application had indeed been submitted with my social security number and employment information, but the supporting documentation, bank statements, tax returns, had been sent from my parents' email address. The closing was scheduled for the following week. I requested copies of all documents be sent to my actual email address, claiming I needed to review everything before closing. An hour later, I was looking at a mortgage application with a signature that was supposed to be mine. It wasn't even a good forgery. I recognized my father's handwriting attempting to mimic mine. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. My parents had used my identity, my excellent credit that I had spent years building to secure a mortgage they likely couldn't qualify for themselves. And based on the property and loan amount, it had to be for Amanda and Bradley's dream home. I sat in my office blinds, drawn staring at the documents on my screen. The betrayal cut deep. Not just the identity theft itself, but the calculation behind it. They had deliberately stolen from me, risked my financial future and professional reputation, all to give my sister something she hadn't earned. I thought about all those years of working multiple jobs, living with roommates, eating cheap food carefully, managing every credit card and loan payment to build my perfect credit score. All that sacrifice and discipline only to have my own family try to leverage it without my knowledge or consent. The anger came in waves, followed by disbelief, then more anger. I canceled my client meetings for the afternoon, claiming a sudden illness. In a way, it wasn't a lie. I felt physically sick, my stomach churning with the realization that the people who were supposed to love and protect me had instead exploited me in one of the worst ways possible. As I drove home to my condo that evening, questions swirled in my mind. Did Amanda know about this scheme? Was Bradley involved? How long had they been planning this? And most importantly, what was I going to do about it? I took the next day off work. I couldn't focus on client finances when my own had been so thoroughly violated. Instead, I dedicated the day to understanding exactly what had happened and what my options were. First, I researched mortgage fraud and identity theft by family members. What I found was sobering. This wasn't just a family disagreement or a misunderstanding. It was a federal crime with serious consequences. My parents could face charges of identity theft, mortgage fraud, and forgery crimes that carried potential prison sentences. I called Marcus, a high school friend who had become a criminal defense attorney. Without mentioning names, I explained the situation. So hypothetically, Marcus said, after hearing my story, if someone's parents used their identity to obtain a mortgage without consent, we're talking serious charges. Identity theft alone carries up to 15 years in federal prison. Mortgage fraud adds another 30 years potential maximum sentence, plus fines up to $1 million. That seems extreme for family members, I said, feeling suddenly protective despite my anger. The law doesn't care about family ties. Fraud is fraud. But realistically, first-time offenders with good attorneys might get reduced sentences. Still, we're talking potential jail time, probation, and financial ruin. Their careers would be over. Especially your mother's no real estate license after a fraud conviction. The gravity of the situation sank in. My parents had committed serious crimes that could destroy their lives. As angry as I wasn't sure I wanted that. What would you advise a client in this situation, I asked. Document everything. Freeze your credit. File reports with the credit bureaus. Contact the lender to report the fraud. And decide whether you want to press charges. After thanking Marcus, I turned my attention to understanding why my parents had done this. The most logical explanation was that the mortgage was for Amanda and Bradley's new home, the perfect first house they'd been talking about. I hadn't paid much attention to Amanda's social media in years, but now I went digging. Sure enough, her Instagram was filled with posts about our new custom build and dream home design. There were photos of her and Bradley standing on an empty lot, blueprints in hand. In one caption from January, she wrote, "So grateful to have parents who help make dreams come true, blessed dream home." The timestamp on that post was 2 weeks before the mortgage application was submitted in my name. I kept scrolling and found more evidence: Amanda and Bradley meeting with contractors, selecting fixtures, choosing paint colors. My parents appeared in several photos, beaming proudly, as if they were providing some generous gift. In reality, they were committing fraud and potentially ruining my financial future. A thought struck me. If this information was so openly shared on social media, how many people knew about the house? Did the entire family know what my parents were doing? I checked my text messages. There was a family group chat that I'd been added to years ago but mostly ignored. Scrolling back through months of messages, I found numerous references to Amanda's house. Cousins asking for updates on the construction, aunts offering decorating advice. uncles recommending contractors. But there was another family group chat I wasn't part of. Amanda had accidentally referenced it once in the main chat, as I said in the other group. They had a separate conversation that excluded me where they were likely discussing the details of this scheme. The realization that I might be the only one in the dark hit hard. Was I so disconnected from my family that they felt comfortable not only committing fraud in my name but discussing it openly among themselves? Did everyone know except me? I called my cousin Ryan, whom I had always been relatively close to despite the family dynamics. "Hey Ryan, quick question. Have you heard anything about Amanda's new house?" His hesitation told me everything before he even spoke. Yeah. The one being built near your parents. It's supposed to be amazing. Indoor pool, home theater, the works. Who's paying for it? I asked directly. Another pause. I think your parents are helping them out with the down payment or something. Why? Just curious. Amanda mentioned it, but I didn't get the details. The lie came easily. So they're taking out a mortgage. I guess so, I don't know the financial stuff. But your mom said something about them being able to afford a lot more house than expected. Good timing with interest rates and all that. After hanging up, I sat back and processed this new information. An indoor pool, a home theater. This wasn't just a starter home for a young couple, it was a luxury property that even with Bradley's family money seemed excessive. And good timing with interest rates was my mother's subtle way of acknowledging they'd secured better terms than they should have by stealing my identity and using my credit score. The betrayal wasn't just about the fraud itself. It was about the systematic exclusion, the family-wide conspiracy of silence, the casual way they'd all discussed this major decision that put me at financial risk without ever thinking to include me in the conversation. I was the outsider in my own family, the one whose achievements were minimized, whose hard work was taken for granted, and now whose financial identity was stolen without a second thought. The hurt was profound, but it crystallized my resolve. I needed to protect myself, even if it meant taking action against my own family. That night I barely slept. I kept cycling through my options, trying to find the least damaging path forward. On one hand, my parents and sister had committed serious crimes against me. They had stolen my identity, forged my signature, and put my financial future and professional reputation at risk. I had every right to report them to the authorities and let justice take its course. On the other hand, they were my family. Despite our strained relationship and their clear favoritism toward Amanda, the thought of my parents in prison jumpsuits made me physically ill. My mother was in her 60s, my father approaching 70. A fraud conviction would destroy the retirement they were already struggling with. And what about Amanda? As much as her entitled attitude frustrated me, did I want to be responsible for ruining her engagement? And future Bradley came from a conservative, reputation-conscious family. A financial scandal would likely end their relationship. I considered a third option, confronting them directly, demanding they withdraw the application and hoping they'd make it right. But my financial advisor experience told me this was naive. The closing was days away. Amanda and Bradley had likely made plans based on getting this house. My parents had clearly been planning this for months. A simple conversation wouldn't solve the problem. Besides, they'd had countless opportunities to come to me honestly, to ask for help, explain their situation, request a loan, or even a gift toward Amanda's house. Instead, they chose deception and theft. Why would I expect honesty now? At 6 a.m. after a restless night, I called Leah, another friend from my MBA program who had become a financial crimes investigator for a major bank. "You need to protect yourself," she said firmly, after hearing an anonymized version of my situation. Family fraud is more common than people realize, and it's especially dangerous because the perpetrators have access to so much personal information. They know your mother's maiden name, your first pet, your childhood address, all those security questions. So what should I do? First, freeze your credit at all 3 bureaus immediately. That prevents any new accounts from being opened. Second, contact the lender and report the fraud. You don't have to name names yet. Just report that the application wasn't submitted by you. Third, set up enhanced credit monitoring and identity protection services. What about filing a police report? She hesitated. That's where it gets complicated with family. A police report creates an official record of the fraud which you'll need for complete protection and to remove the account from your credit history. But it also starts a criminal investigation, which could lead to charges against the perpetrators. Exactly. Some people file what's called an information-only police report, where they document the fraud but decline to press charges initially. It gives you some protection while you decide how to proceed. After thanking Leah, I made my decision. I would take immediate action to protect myself financially, but leave the door open for a family resolution if possible. It seemed like the balanced approach. First, I called all 3 credit bureaus and placed security freezes on my credit reports. This would prevent any further accounts from being opened in my name. Next, I enrolled in the most comprehensive identity protection service available with real-time monitoring and alerts. Then came the hardest part. I contacted the mortgage lender and reported that I had not applied for or authorized the mortgage that appeared in my name. I explained that I believed it was identity theft, but didn't yet name my parents as the perpetrators. The lender informed me they would place an immediate hold on the application and launch an investigation. The closing scheduled for next week will be postponed pending our findings, the fraud department representative explained. We take these matters very seriously, Mr. Carter. I understand. I'd like to provide additional documentation to support my claim. I spent the next 2 hours compiling evidence screenshots of the forged signature records, showing I lived in Boston while the application claimed I lived in Connecticut, proof of my actual employment versus what was stated on the proof application. I created a detailed timeline of events and wrote a statement explaining that I had not authorized anyone to apply for a mortgage in my name. I stopped short of identifying my parents as the perpetrators in my official statement. That was a line I wasn't ready to cross, at least not yet. After submitting everything to the lender, I contacted a real estate attorney to understand my options and potential liability. The consultation was expensive, but worth it for the peace of mind. You've taken appropriate steps to protect yourself, the attorney assured me. By reporting the fraud promptly and creating a paper trail, you've established that you were not a willing participant. That's crucial if this ends up in court. What are the chances of that happening? It depends on how the other parties respond. If they admit to the fraud and withdraw the application, this might be resolved without litigation. If they fight it or try to claim you were aware and approved, the application things could get messy. I left the attorney's office with a clear understanding of my position and a retainer agreement in case things escalated. On my way home, I stopped by a local police station and filed an information-only police report documenting the identity theft without naming suspects or pressing charges. That night, I sat in my darkened living room, a glass of whiskey in hand, contemplating the storm that was about to hit my family. My phone had been suspiciously quiet all day. The lender hadn't yet contacted my parents about the fraud report, but they would soon. And then what? Would my parents call to apologize, to beg for forgiveness, to threaten me? Would Amanda launch into one of her dramatic emotional manipulations? Or would they all close ranks against me, the family outsider who dared to stand up for himself? As I stared out at the Boston skyline, I felt a strange sense of calm. For the first time in my life, I was setting a boundary with my family. It wasn't petty revenge or an emotional reaction, it was a necessary act of self-protection. Whatever happened next, I knew I had done the right thing for myself. Little did I know that next would arrive sooner and more dramatically than I expected. The call came at 9:15 the next morning. I was at my desk reviewing client portfolios when an unknown Connecticut number flashed on my screen. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. "Hello, is this Zane Carter?" The woman's voice was professional but strained. "Yes, this is Zane. Mr. Carter, my name is Julia Thornton. I'm the realtor handling the sale of the property at 8 Lakeside Drive in Westport, Connecticut. I'm calling because there seems to be an issue with the mortgage financing." My heart raced, but I kept my voice steady. "What kind of issue?" "Well, the lender contacted me this morning saying there's been a fraud alert placed on the application. The closing scheduled for Friday has been postponed indefinitely. I'm trying to understand what's happening because we have buyers who are supposed to move in next week." Buyers. not applicants or borrowers. She was talking about Amanda and Bradley as if they had already purchased the home. I see, I said noncommittally. And you're calling me because the mortgage application is in your name, Mr. Carter. The lender suggested I speak with you directly. This was interesting. The lender hadn't told her about my fraud report specifically, just that there was an issue. She didn't know I was the one who had frozen the process. Miss Thornton, I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. I never applied for a mortgage on that property. I live in Boston and have no plans to purchase a home in Westport. There was a long pause before she spoke again, her voice now uncertain. But your parents, they've been handling everything for your sister and her fiancé. They said you were helping with the financing as a gift. The audacity was breathtaking. Not only had they committed fraud in my name, but they'd created an entire narrative about my generosity to explain it. That's not accurate, I said firmly. I never agreed to any such arrangement. Oh my goodness. Her professional demeanor cracked slightly. This island. Unexpected. Your sister and her fiancé have already given notice at their apartment. They have movers scheduled for next Thursday. Custom furniture has been ordered for delivery next Friday. I'm sorry to hear that, but none of this was authorized by me. Mr. Carter, is there any way you could speak with your family? Perhaps there's been a miscommunication. The sellers have already purchased another home contingent on this sale. There are multiple families whose plans will be disrupted if this falls through. I felt a momentary twinge of guilt quickly replaced by resolve. These weren't my problems to solve. I suggest you speak with my parents about this situation, Miss Thornton. I've stated my position clearly. I did not apply for or authorize this mortgage. After ending the call, I knew the clock was ticking. The realtor would undoubtedly contact my parents immediately. Sure enough, within 20 minutes, my phone exploded with notifications. 3 missed calls from my father, 5 from my mother, 2 from numbers I didn't recognize but suspected belonged to Amanda and Bradley. Voicemails began piling up, along with text messages. The first text from my mother read simply, "Zane, please call us as soon as possible. It's important." My father's message was similarly vague. "Son, we need to talk. Call me when you get this." I didn't respond to either. I wanted them to sweat, to wonder exactly how much I knew and what I planned to do about it. An hour later, the tone of the messages changed. "Mother Zane, there's been a misunderstanding with Amanda's house. Please call so we can explain." "Father, this is a family matter that needs to be discussed privately. Call me." By lunchtime, desperation had set in. "Mother Zane, please. Amanda is distraught. We made a mistake. Let us explain." "Father, son, I know you're upset, but shutting us out isn't the answer. We need to talk this through as a family." Amanda finally texted around 2 o'clock. "What the hell, Zane? You're ruining everything. I can't believe you'd do this to me." The irony of her accusation wasn't lost on me. By mid-afternoon, I had 17 missed calls, 23 text messages, and 9 voicemails. I listened to the voicemails during my lunch break, noting the progression from casual call me back to increasingly desperate pleas. My mother's final voicemail was tearful, "Zane, sweetie, please call us. This is all a big misunderstanding. We were going to tell you everything. Amanda and Bradley will lose their dream home if you don't help us sort this out. Please. I'm begging you." My father, ever the pragmatist, took a different approach. "Zane, I understand you're upset. We should have discussed this with you first. I take full responsibility for that oversight. But what's done is done. Let's find a solution that works for everyone. Call me back, son." Amanda's voicemail was exactly what I expected. Dramatic, self-centered, and manipulative. "I can't believe you're doing this to me. After everything I've been through. The wedding is in 4 months. Zane, 4 months. Where are we supposed to live?" Bradley is furious. His parents are asking questions. "You're ruining my life. And for what spite? I always knew you were jealous of me, but this is low, even for you." I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I focused on my work meeting with clients and reviewing investment strategies as if it were any normal day. Inside, though, I was a mess of conflicting emotions: anger, hurt, vindication, and even a twinge of satisfaction at finally standing up for myself. At 5:30, just as I was preparing to leave the office, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "Legal consequences of your actions." The message was brief but threatening. Zane. This is Bradley. Your childish tantrum is jeopardizing multiple families' living situations and could result in substantial financial losses. If you persist in this behavior, my family's attorneys will explore all legal options, including a civil suit for damages and potentially criminal charges for deliberate financial sabotage. Be smart and call your parents immediately to resolve this situation. I laughed out loud at the absurdity. He was threatening me with legal action when my parents had committed actual federal crimes in my name. The email revealed how little they understood the gravity of what they'd done, or how completely they'd misread my character. They still thought I would fold under pressure, as I had so many times before. Not this time. Just as I was about to head home, my office phone rang. It was the receptionist from the lobby. "Mr. Carter, there's an Aunt Linda here to see you. She says it's a family emergency." Aunt Linda, my mother's sister. They'd sent reinforcements. "Tell her I've already left for the day I instructed. She says she flew in from Chicago specifically to see you." She's quite insistent. Of course she was. Aunt Linda had always been my mother's most loyal ally. "I'm sorry, but I have another appointment. Please tell her I can't meet today." As I gathered my things, my cell phone rang with Aunt Linda's number. I declined the call and took the back exit from the building to avoid a potential confrontation in the lobby. On my drive home, the reality of the situation fully hit me. This wasn't just my parents and sister. The entire extended family was involved, forming a united front against me. They'd known about the fraudulent mortgage all along. Some had even contributed to the deception by discussing it in group chats, while carefully excluding me. For years, I'd told myself that my place on the family periphery was my choice, that I was too busy with my career to engage more fully. Now I understood the truth. I had always been the outsider, the one whose interests and welfare could be sacrificed for Amanda's benefit. The realization was painful but clarifying. These people weren't acting in my best interest, and never had been. Whatever came next, I needed to prioritize protecting myself, even if it meant permanently altering my relationship with my family. After another sleepless night, I decided it was time to face my family directly. Not in person, I wasn't ready for that. But at least hear their explanation. I needed to understand how they could possibly justify what they'd done before I made any final decisions about pressing charges. I called my father's cell phone at exactly 9 o'clock the next morning. He answered on the first ring. "Zane, thank God. We've been trying to reach you." "I know," I said coolly. "I've been busy dealing with the identity theft situation." A beat of silence. "Son, this is all a misunderstanding. We should discuss this as a family. Can you do a video call so everyone can participate?" "Fine. Set it up and text me the link." 20 minutes later, I sat at my kitchen table staring at my laptop screen. My parents appeared first, sitting close together on their living room sofa. They looked tired and stressed, my mother's eyes red from crying, my father's usually perfect hair uncombed. "Zane, thank you for agreeing to talk." My father began, his voice artificially casual, as if we were discussing weekend plans rather than federal crimes. "We know you must have questions about the mortgage situation." "The mortgage situation," I repeated flatly. "You mean the fraudulent application you submitted in my name without my knowledge or consent, the forged signature, the identity theft?" "That situation..." My mother flinched. "Honey, we were going to tell you. We just wanted to wait until after the closing. After you'd already committed multiple federal crimes in my name. How thoughtful." "Don't be dramatic," my father said, his patronizing tone instantly igniting my anger. "We were simply helping Amanda and Bradley secure their first home. We always intended to make the payments. Your name was just on the paperwork. Just on the paperwork. Do you have any idea what you've done? You've committed mortgage fraud and identity theft. Those are serious federal crimes with potential prison sentences. My mother's eyes widened. Prison? Don't be ridiculous. This is a family matter. Before I could respond, Amanda joined the call, her face blotchy from crying. How could you do this to me, Zane? We're supposed to move in next week. The apartment lease is ending. The movers are scheduled. The furniture is being delivered. I didn't do anything to you, Amanda. I'm the victim here. My identity was stolen. It wasn't stolen, she shrieked. Mom and Dad were helping us. You're just jealous because I'm getting married and starting a real life while you're alone in your sad little condo. A real life funded by fraud, I replied calmly. And my sad little condo is paid for with money I earned legally. Unlike your so-called dream home. Bradley appeared on screen next, his arm around Amanda protectively. His usually smooth, confident expression was replaced by barely contained anger. This is completely unnecessary, Zane. You're creating a crisis out of a simple family arrangement. Your parents assured us you'd be fine with helping your sister. Without asking me first, that's not help, it's fraud. My father leaned forward. Son, we'll make all the payments. You won't have to contribute a dime. Your credit won't be affected. We just needed your credit history to secure the loan. Because your own credit is too poor to qualify, I stated. It wasn't a question. My parents exchanged glances. We've had some financial setbacks, my father admitted reluctantly. The market hasn't been kind to our investments, and your mother's real estate business suffered during the downturn. So instead of living within your means or having an honest conversation with Amanda and Bradley about what you could afford, you decided to commit fraud. We were trying to help your sister, my mother cried. Is that so wrong to want the best for our daughter? At the expense of your son. By committing crimes in my name that could destroy my career and financial future. Yes, that's wrong. Bradley's expression darkened. Look, what's done is done. The practical question now is how to move forward. The sellers are threatening to keep the earnest money if we don't close next week. That's $50,000, Zane. Are you prepared to cost your family that much just to prove a point? I laughed without humor. That's rich coming from someone who was just threatening me with lawsuits. But let me be clear, I don't owe you anything. Not an explanation, not assistance, and certainly not my financial identity. I turned my attention back to my parents. Let me explain exactly what you've done since you seem confused about the severity. By submitting a mortgage application in my name, without my consent, you committed identity theft, a federal crime punishable by up to 15 years in prison. By forging my signature on loan documents, you committed forgery, another serious crime. And by lying on a mortgage application, you committed mortgage fraud, which carries up to 30 years in prison and fines up to $1 million. My parents paled as I continued. As a financial advisor, I'm subject to background checks and financial scrutiny. If a fraudulent mortgage appeared on my record, I could lose my professional licenses, my job, and my career. Did either of you consider that before you decided to steal my identity for Amanda's house? We would never let that happen, my mother protested. We'll make every payment on time, I swear. With what money? I asked pointedly. You just admitted you're having financial difficulties. What happens when you miss a payment? When the lender forecloses, all of that would be on my credit history, destroying everything I've worked for. My father spread his hands in a placating gesture. We'll figure something out. Maybe Bradley's parents could help with the payments. Bradley's head snapped up. My parents don't know about this arrangement, and they're not going to. My father would never approve of this situation. Something in his tone made me pause. They don't know about the house. They know we're buying a house, Bradley said carefully. They don't know about the financing details. The fraud, you mean? I stared at him through the screen. Does anyone in your family know that this mortgage is being obtained fraudulently? Bradley's silence was answer enough. I thought not. Because normal people don't commit felonies to buy houses they can't afford. Amanda burst into tears again. You're ruining everything. The wedding's in 4 months. Where are we supposed to live? Bradley's parents are expecting us to have the house ready for the rehearsal dinner. That's not my problem, I said firmly. You all created this situation. You can deal with the consequences. What do you want, Zane? My father asked, his voice tight with frustration. Money. Is that it? Because if this is some delayed resentment about college funding or inheritance expectations, we can discuss that separately. His suggestion that my objection to identity theft was really about money was the last straw. What I want is for you to admit to the lender that you submitted a fraudulent application. I want you to come clean, withdraw the application, and take responsibility for your actions. Otherwise, I'll press charges for identity theft and fraud. The shock on their faces would have been comical under different circumstances. You wouldn't, my mother whispered. We're your family. Family doesn't steal from each other, I replied. Family doesn't put each other at risk of financial ruin. You made your choice when you decided to use my information without my consent. Now I'm making mine. This will destroy us, my father said hoarsely. My reputation in the community, your mother's real estate license. Everything we've built. You should have thought of that before committing multiple felonies. Amanda was sobbing uncontrollably now. What about my wedding? My future? How can you be so cruel? Bradley, meanwhile, had gone very quiet, his expression calculating as he looked between Amanda and her parents. I need to discuss this situation with my parents, he said finally. This has financial implications I wasn't fully aware of. The implication was clear. Bradley was reconsidering the relationship now that he understood the true financial situation of his future in-laws. You have 24 hours, I told my parents. Either you contact the lender and admit what you've done, or I'll file a formal police report naming you as the perpetrators of identity theft and fraud. Your choice. Without waiting for a response, I ended the call and closed my laptop. My hands were shaking, but my mind was clear. For the first time in my life, I had stood up to my family and set a firm boundary. Whatever happened next was up to them. The following day, I received a call from the lender's fraud department. My parents had contacted them, admitted to submitting the application without my knowledge or consent, and withdrawn the mortgage request. The account would be removed from my credit report, and the lender would not pursue charges since I, as the victim, had not requested prosecution. 3 hours later, I got a text from Amanda. Bradley called off the engagement. I hope you're happy now. That you've ruined my life. I wasn't happy. But I was proud of myself for finally standing up for what was right even when it was difficult. And deep down I knew this painful episode might ultimately lead to something better for all of us. 6 months passed with no contact from my family. No calls on my birthday. No invitation to Thanksgiving dinner. Just silence. It was painful, but also peaceful. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't managing the undercurrent of family drama that had always consumed so much of my emotional energy. I threw myself into my work, taking on new clients and expanding my practice to include identity theft recovery services. My personal experience had given me insights that most financial advisors lacked, and clients appreciated my thorough understanding of both the financial and emotional aspects of identity theft. Then, on a crisp October afternoon, I received an email from Amanda. I almost deleted it without reading, but curiosity won out. Zane, I've been in therapy for the past 4 months. My therapist suggested I reach out to make amends. I'm sorry for my role in what happened with the house and mortgage. I knew what Mom and Dad were doing was wrong, but I convinced myself it was okay because they said they'd handle everything. I should have stood up and said no. I was selfish and entitled, and I hurt you in the process. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I understand what I did was wrong. I read the email 3 times, searching for the manipulation or hidden agenda that had characterized so many of Amanda's apologies in the past. But it seemed genuine, a simple acknowledgement of wrongdoing without excuses or expectations. I replied briefly, "Thank you for your apology. I appreciate your honesty and wish you well with your therapy journey." 2 weeks later, a letter arrived from my parents, an actual handwritten letter not an email or text. My mother's neat cursive filled 3 pages with what appeared to be a sincere accounting of their actions and regrets. "We betrayed your trust in the worst possible way," she wrote. "We convinced ourselves we were helping Amanda, but the truth is, we were enabling her dependence and entitlement, while simultaneously violating your autonomy and potentially destroying your financial future. No parent should ever sacrifice one child for another, yet that's exactly what we've done throughout your lives. We don't expect forgiveness, but we want you to know we're taking responsibility for our actions and working to become better people and better parents." My father had added a paragraph at the end in his blocky handwriting. "Son, I failed you as a father. I taught you to be responsible and independent, then punished you for embodying those very qualities while rewarding Amanda's dependence. When you succeeded despite our lack of support, I resented you for it instead of celebrating your achievements. Then I committed a crime against you that could have destroyed everything you worked so hard to build. I am deeply ashamed and profoundly sorry." The letter concluded with an invitation, not a demand or expectation, but a genuine invitation. "If you ever feel ready to attempt rebuilding our relationship, we would be grateful for the opportunity. In the meantime, we're respecting your boundary and focusing on becoming people worthy of your trust." I didn't respond immediately. I needed time to process my feelings and determine whether I was ready for any level of reconciliation. After discussing it with my therapist, yes, I had started therapy too, I decided to accept a limited Thanksgiving invitation dinner only, no overnight stay, with the understanding that I could leave at any time if I felt uncomfortable. That Thanksgiving was awkward but surprisingly healing. My parents' home felt different, smaller, more modest. I later learned they had downsized, selling their colonial to pay off debt and purchase a more affordable townhouse. My mother had taken financial management classes. My father had joined a support group for parents working to repair relationships with adult children. Amanda came for dessert, only arriving without the dramatic entrance that had been her trademark at family gatherings. She looked different, less polished, more authentic. She had moved into a small apartment and taken a full-time job at a nonprofit, her first real adult position, with responsibilities and accountability. "Bradley's gone," she told me when we had a moment alone. "After the mortgage fell through, he started pulling away. When he realized Mom and Dad couldn't contribute much to the wedding, he suggested postponing. Then postponing became canceling, and canceling became taking a break. Last I heard, he's dating a banker's daughter." "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it. Whatever her faults, Amanda had genuinely loved Bradley. She shrugged. "Don't be. He loved the idea of me, the pretty carefree girl with the seemingly successful family. He didn't want the real me with real problems and responsibilities. I'm actually okay on my own for the first time in my life. It's scary but good." Over the following months, our family began a careful reconstruction. We set clear boundaries. We had honest conversations about the past. My parents attended family therapy both with me and without me. They made no grand promises, just small, consistent efforts to rebuild trust, one interaction at a time. My father asked for my help reviewing his retirement plan, a humble acknowledgement of my expertise that would have been unthinkable a year earlier. My mother consulted me before making investment decisions, openly admitting her past financial mistakes. Amanda and I developed a relationship as equals for the first time. She asked about my work with genuine interest. I supported her efforts to build an independent life. We discovered shared interests that had been obscured by years of parental favoritism and competition. For my 32nd birthday, instead of the obligatory gift card they usually sent, my parents gave me something priceless: a folder containing documentation of all the steps they'd taken to ensure my financial security and identity protection. They had installed advanced security measures on their computers and phones, created unique passwords for all accounts enrolled in identity monitoring services, and taken courses on cybersecurity and fraud prevention. "We can't undo the breach of trust," my father said as I reviewed the documents, "but we can show you through actions that we're committed to protecting rather than endangering your financial future." On the professional front, my identity theft recovery specialty had grown into a significant part of my practice. I developed educational materials, spoke at community events, and helped dozens of clients navigate the complex process of reclaiming their financial identities. Many were victims of family fraud like me, grateful to work with someone who understood both the practical and emotional dimensions of their experience. Looking back from the perspective of 18 months after that fateful credit check, I can see that the painful experience held valuable lessons. I learned that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary for healthy relationships. I discovered that standing up for myself didn't destroy my family. It created the opportunity for a more authentic connection based on mutual respect, rather than obligation or manipulation. Most importantly, I realized that forgiveness doesn't require forgetting. I could forgive my parents and sister for their actions, while still maintaining healthy boundaries and expecting accountability. Forgiveness wasn't a gift I gave them. It was a gift I gave myself, releasing the anger and resentment that had weighed me down. If you're watching this and dealing with family financial manipulation or identity theft, remember this: you have the right to protect yourself. Family connections don't obligate you to accept mistreatment or criminal behavior. The path to resolution may be painful, but standing in your truth is always worth it in the end. Have you ever had a family member abuse your trust financially? How did you handle it? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found value in my story, please hit the like button and subscribe for more real-life experiences. Remember to protect your credit reports and personal information, even from those closest to you. Because sometimes the people who should protect us the most are the ones we need to guard against. Thank you for listening, and take care of your financial health and your emotional well-being. They're both equally important in building a truly successful life.